It is the 13th of the 8th, 2024. The time, 2 minutes past 8. And there is news in the weird and wacky world that is the one that formulas. And I don't hate it. In particular, we've got to talk about Adrian Newey, because this news, it feels, is turning a corner. Everybody converging on the ultimate eventuality that this dude, one of the goatiest aerodynamic minds who have ever aerodynamicked, will be joining the Martin, the Astons, very soon. The latest drop of news is that Damon Hill has said as much, that he's got particular, very specific intel on this, that Adrian Newey will be joining Aston Martin under the stewardship of one Lawrence Stroll. Oh, the humanity. Ted Kravitz too has come out and said that he thinks the dream that was Newey and Hamilton at the red car is potentially over. It is going to get techie, and we'll talk to Newey properly, I promise, because I think there's another news story in there, being why didn't Ferrari get him in the first instance, and we need to cover that properly and comprehensively in a way that's true and fair and representative. So too is there news about one Toto Wolff, who once upon a time wanted to be the head of the commercial rights holder, Liberty Media settings, Formula One, aka Stefano Domenicali. However, that was vetoed. We'll get to that. Pierre Vacher too has chimed in, talking about what they need to do as far as the gap analysis to get Checo Perez back to where he needs to be, saying that this isn't necessarily going to be the most easiest of operations. Oh, the humanity. Let's talk to Adrian Newey, because this story is getting very techy. Now listen, my crystal ball is as murky as the next person's, but if we're talking about the most likely probability, the most likely outcome in all of this, Adrian Newey, where is he going to be, who's going to announce him as at the 1st of September, it's looking more and more by the day like it will be Aston Martin, Lawrence Stroll. Now, what's the history there? Lawrence Stroll gave him the exclusive tour around the factory, didn't he? Told all the factory workers, the Aston Martin ones, to go and take a tea break, a 2-hour one, whilst they court and woo and give the corporate hospitality spiel to one Adrian Newey. Why would Lawrence Stroll do that? Well, because he's acutely aware that there is no one in F1 like Adrian Newey, who has that mind, who has that race, performance and engineer background that he has. He has the ability to see the car from so many different angles, having race and performance engineered Damon Hill back in the day in the early 90s. He's that guy. Adrian Newey is the guy that designed the Leighton House March 881. God tier settings, Ivan Capelli. You know the story that Alain Prost was going through a high-speed turn and backed off. They thought Alain Prost's car was broken, but it wasn't. He just thought Ivan Capelli in that Adrian Newey car that there is no way in hell that he could carry that amount of minimum speed through that turn without yeeting it. That's the dude who we're talking about. As far as the chassis sensitivity and its interaction with the suspension and the aero as the holy trinity, the triumvirate in terms of F1, he is the godfather of this. That's basically the lessons that he learned in the early 90s. He's taught ad infinitum about how he blamed himself for Senna's passing, not because of a faulty steering column, but because he failed to adapt the active suspension of the previous year in 1993 to the new regulations of 1994. His chassis lacked the adaptability for the 1994 regs. So what Adrian Newey will never ever do, for the avoidance of doubt, is build a car that's not adaptable. 2026 is going to be techie right, new rules and regs, new tech specification, reduced reliance on ground effect cars. Who better than to take your team, if you are Aston Martin and Lawrence Stroll, back to the mountaintop than one Adrian Newey? He's a key person, and Lawrence Stroll therefore is doing everything to sign him. Why did he leave in the first place? Well, Christian Horner allegations. The PA that levied those allegations, again, her appeal wasn't upheld as recently as last week. That lady was also PA to Adrian Newey, allegedly. if rumour and speculation is to be believed. And Adrian Newey's never been involved in that politics, right? That's the reason why he left all of those teams back in the day. Leighton Housemarch hired a finance guy. Adrian Newey wasn't interested and left. When it got too techie at McLaren, Adrian Newey up sticks and left. When Frank Williams didn't obey the stipulation in Adrian Newey's contract that said that he needed to be notified of any driver changes in advance 2 years running, Adrian Newey said, you know what, that's me, I'm upping and I am leaving. Oh, the humanity. Techie, any, aye. Very, very techie. But that's the nature of the person that we're speaking to here. That's who Adrian Newey is. So Lawrence Stroll can't say that he doesn't know who he's getting and that he can't appeal to that chap's nature. There's a very famous conversation that Adrian Newey had with Dietrich Mateschitz when he was about to sign or even considering signing for the Bulls that are red. And it went something like this: mate, you give me everything I need, all of the money, the resources, and let me crack on with it. I'll build you a race car capable of winning races and championships. Dietrich Mateschitz, the legend of Red Bull. He said, you know what, mate, on your bike, chap. And Adrian Newey said, all right then, cool, those are my terms and I'm sticking to them. Either you come on board and get me on board or do not. There's no grey areas here. We're cool. Do you know what I mean? I'll crack on. Dietrich Mateschitz said, you know what, this might be the guy, advised by David Coulthard. This might be the guy to take us to the promised land. And the rest, they say, is history. However, in this Adrian Newey story, as he's on the cusp of signing for Aston Martin, soon to be announced September. In fact, why September the 1st, I hear you say? Well, of course, there is contractual clauses. There will be a sabbatical period, a gardening leave enforced, therefore, by Red Bull. What you can't have is key personnel leaving and taking secrets with you. Hence why they've shunned him, made sure that he can't attend the technical meetings any longer, so that he can't take those secrets. Not that Adrian Newey needs them, by the way, but that's why he will be on a sabbatical or gardening leave, whatever you want to call it, up until September, post the summer break, after Sandvort in a couple of weeks' time. Then, however, that's when you'll start to hear these announcements about Adrian Newey joining the team they call Aston Martin. Techie. But I think there's a bigger news story in this. Why not Lewis Hamilton? Why not Scuderia Ferrari? Then, Cam, didn't you say a couple of weeks ago, Cam, that Ferrari was absolutely nailed? Well, some say that the beauty in having a mind is the ability to change it right. And this is a moving target. The paradigm shift in Formula One every single day. And there were some very reputable journalists that said that Ferrari was nailed. Mark Priestley, F1 Elvis, said that he was speaking to people inside the paddock and they said that the Adrian Newey contract had been signed. Lewis Hamilton, some said, had been instrumental in securing that signature. Adrian Newey has said on a gazillion occasions now that he always harboured aspirations to work for Scuderia Ferrari, owing to its heritage, the prestige, the legacy classic cars that he'd have access to that he wouldn't otherwise. Plus, Lewis Hamilton, you tick 2 of those bucket list items if indeed you go across to Maranello. However, you know for a fact that Adrian Newey, again, he's 65 years old. This will more than likely be his last contract in Formula One, notwithstanding the fact that he's taken counsel from Bernie Ecclestone and wants to keep his mind active in his senior years. His dad didn't do that. And again, his dad got slower as far as his cerebral function. And Adrian Newey's desperate not to repeat the mistakes of familial past, isn't he? Gets techie, this does. Mikel, can't wait for Zandvoort. Me neither. It's going to get techie. Foster says, once again, Aston Martin decided to do the Le Mans. I knew was going to Aston Martin and not Ferrari, not me. I'd love to be as bright and brilliant as you, Foster. My crystal ball apparently is more murky than yours. But on this Adrian Newey thing, I think it's important that we understand why he didn't go to Ferrari, because again, I've talked about it a gazillion times and I was convinced he was going to go due to the aforementioned, the heritage, the prestige of going to Ferrari. Everybody in Formula One, particularly the drivers at some stage in their career, want to drive for Ferrari. It's Schumacher, it's grandeur, it's prestige, it's the Tifosi. No fans will scream your name as loud as the Tifosi. Imagine Lewis in the red overalls at Monza next year. Oh, the humanity that he wins. You can't bottle and sell that sort of passion and that feeling. Again, this is what Ferrari are trying to bottle, right? Like trying to market. The upside as far as Lewis joining Ferrari is in that the symbiosis of brand Hamilton and Scuderia Ferrari as they desperately try to transition out of a sports car market as far as a brand into a luxury brand. Lewis Hamilton signing per Elkin will be instrumental in that. But why not Adrian Newey? Well, there's a couple of key reasons. And again, the legend that is Joe Saward writes something that I feel is quite pertinent. When Enrico Cardile left, not long, Frederick Vasseurs' name turned, his title even, the role after his name was adjusted to not just team principal, but to technical director too. Now, why is that pertinent? Well, of course, it's a temporary measure until Loic Serra comes in and he owns that role. But I think that's pertinent for a couple of different reasons. I think Frederick Vasseur is the one making the decisions, the one holding the purse strings, the one in whose possession is the red pen as far as whether to or not to sign one Adrian Newey. I've said already, what does Adrian Newey want? He wants infrastructure, he wants requisite financial resources, and he wants to be left the fudge alone. Crack on, Adrian. I have faith in you. Hire and fire engineers. What you don't want, you want us to hire Rob Marshall? You want us to get Dan Fellows in? Tick, tick. We're with you, Adrian. That's the sort of answers you want to give. And Ferrari, if anything in their history, they've been plagued by politicking, haven't they? That sort of red tape and bureaucracy. And again, if you're talking about trying to get things done, they're less agile in that sense. They're an oil tanker. To make change at Scuderia Ferrari, it takes ages. And Adrian Newey can't be dealing with that. He said, these are my terms. I want 100 million potentially over 4 or 3 years, depending on who you're speaking to. This is what I need. I need to be involved in the hiring and firing of all the engineers with whom I will be working. That's what I need. And I also want the power of veto as far as those engineers too. Those are the 3 parameters, the 3 stipulations of Adrian Newey. Plus I want myself a cheeky 100 million US dollars over the course of 4 years. Those were the stipulations. Of course, Scuderia Ferrari, notwithstanding being implored to sign Adrian Newey by Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton. Ferrari, what do you think Ferrari said? The goats at seizing defeat from the jaws of victory. They said, what? You want 100 million? We've just signed Sir Lewis on an all-you-can-eat contract. What, and we're going to sign you for 100 million? 65-year-old Adrian Newey? No, tar. No, not having it. Bureaucracy extraordinaire outfit that is Scuderia Ferrari. What do you think they said about the power of veto? What, you want to be able to hire and fire all the engineers? You want veto, Adrian Newey? We are Scuderia Ferrari. We call the shots on who we hire or fire. So, power of veto? Nah, not having that. Frederick Vasseur has technical director after his name for a reason, because of course he will have the final say on who is hired and who is fired, and he will not be looking to give up that power, not as team principal of Scuderia Ferrari. That ultimately is cutting off his cojones before Adrian Newey even steps in the factory, is he not? Ferrari don't play that. And again, that's 9/10 of the reason why Adrian Newey will not work there. Sadly, as gutting as that is for Sir Lewis fans all around the world, desperate to see Lewis in an Adrian Newey car once in his career at least, and Charles Leclerc. What do you mean? Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton in an Adrian Newey design car as soon as 2025. Oh, the humanity. Who didn't want to see that? Now, more than likely, as at September the 1st, Lance Stroll will be blessed with that privilege. It doesn't feel right. You talk to a friend of the channel, Peter D. Windsor, and he says it just doesn't, feels a bit wrong. Feels like Adrian is going for the money, does it not? That capital infrastructure and the resource, the wind tunnel, the not insubstantial investment from Lawrence Stroll on the £250 million factory that's not long come online, that's the selling point. That's the deal clincher as far as Adrian Newey signing for them, not McLaren. McLaren, you would have hoped that the relationship between him and Zach Brown, that their mutual love of classic cars potentially will have come to the fore. The fact that he has that relationship with Rob Marshall, the very first person that he hired for his aerodynamic technical team at Red Bull, that he's there, that Mark Webber is also over there managing Oscar Piastri, and Mark Webber was best man at Adrian Newey's wedding. Some had hoped that he would be joining McLaren, plus he'd been there before, but that, says Damon Hill, is part of the downfall, the downside ramifications. Why would he go there again? Adrian Newey wants a brand new challenge, and again, he didn't leave McLaren on the best of terms, did he? Martin Whitmarsh frog marching him out the door. Why would he go back? What's the incentive, therefore? And I say all that to say this. As at August 2024, the most likely outcome as far as the next destination of the goatiest aerodynamic mind to have ever F1'd is the green machine, Aston Martin. Feels bonkers, eh? Can you imagine Lance Stroll yeeting an Adrian Newey machine into the barrier? Oh, the humanity. But that being said, he does get to tick one driver box at least, because it wasn't just Lewis Hamilton who he wanted to work with. The other driver that Adrian Newey states in his book, and every time somebody puts a microphone in his face, that he desperately wanted to work with, that he rues never having had the opportunity of working with. That chap has a name, and that chap's name is Fernando El Plan Alonso, man from Oviedo, Asturias. As Fernando gets into the latter stage of his career, can you imagine what a weapon he's going to be in an Adrian Newey car? Oh, and by the way, you will have seen the footage by now. Bruce, you're a legend. You will have seen the footage by now of Pedro de la Rosa correcting the way in which he conjugates his verb. The two are playing a game of taboo where Fernando Alonso holds up, again, if you still doubted that Aston Martin were potentially the most likely outcome as far as eventuality, expected value calc. Pedro de la Rosa, friend of one Fernando Alonso, ambassador of Aston Martin, now former test driver at McLaren, again worked with Fernando Plan Alonso. Then in fact those were the two exchanging the emails about Ferrari tyre pressures that kicked off all of the Spygate stuff. But on this occasion, Fernando Plan Alonso holds up a picture. Pedro de la Rosa has to explain to him, has to get Fernando Alonso to guess who's in the picture. Pedro de la Rosa says, te va a gustar, you are going to like, and then stops himself. He's used the future tense as if it's happening for sure. Changes the conjugation of the verb to the conditional. Te gustaría, he says, you would like. Instantly, Fernando Alonso, owing to the way he changes the conjugation of the verb, Pedro de la Rosa, his mate, puts up his hand and he says, Adrian Newey. They both chuckle. They understand the assignment. Bruce, you're a legend. Does it matter what Newey designs? Lance will wreck it. Alonso lost many steps and Max won't race there with Lance on the team. All right. Bruce, you're too kind, by the way. All right, let's extend it. As far as the driver alignment, the chat, the word on the F1 curb, if you're going to invest in that, is that Lance might be shipped out to WEC. They've got the WEC operation at Aston Martin, haven't they? That might, the World Endurance Championships, Le Mans and wherever else, they might ship him out if they need to make space. Potentially, I think Adrian Newey won't go there without a solid plan, a scenario plan in place around what they're going to do with Lance Stroll. I'm going to be honest. I know Adrian's very particular around what his car looks like and who gets to drive them more specifically. And I think there might be a plan around Lance. You remember Lance's dad, said, when I get very passionate about something, as I am with F1, this was at the Liveryville last year, I want to say, I win, he says. And if Lance, his son, is an impediment to that, notwithstanding all the investment that's injected into his career to date, I think Lawrence will ultimately ship him out the way. There's already talk about Max Verstappen joining that operation to reignite his relationship, the collaboration with Honda. Honda love themselves some Max Verstappen, and so too does Adrian Newey. Fernando Alonso and Max Verstappen are good friends. That doesn't mean if they weren't competing for 25 points each and every single race that it wouldn't get a bit techy between them. But as at now, possibility settings, and Max will be looking at that Honda Power Unit A, as he will be the Red Bull Ford powertrain, as he will be the Mercedes one, which, if rumours to be believed, is potentially the best one on the grid, or at least the one for whose performance curve is most expedited, most advanced. Techie visual. Lance is going to be the winner of the league, the Le Mans 24 Hours, mate. But I don't know, with Lance, all right, let's talk about Lance. I don't think he's been that bad this year. Getting closer to Fernando, very, very good in the wet. Still, I don't like his bloody attitude in the press conferences, even on the bloody the grid when they were just playing games. His attitude stinks, doesn't it? My friend once said to me, listen, Cam, we were being served drinks by a bartender. He was very grumpy, and my friend looked the bartender in the face and he said, listen, mate, if you don't like your job, then don't come to work. And it's that simple. That parlays, that leans very nicely into Lance Stroll's predicament, doesn't it? You're one of the luckiest drivers in the world. Yeah, you're skilled, but you've had not insubstantial investment from Papa Stroll. What, and you're going to rock up and you're going to be the incredible sulk every single Grand Prix, every single press conference. You can't have a smile on your face. You can't sit up. You look like Kevin and Perry and you're some sulky teenager that hasn't got his way. And you are an F1 driver with unlimited backing. What are we doing? Nepotism settings. No, mate, you should have a smile on your face. Life is hard. People have a much harder life than you, Lance. What are we doing here? It's nonsense. Lance is Vladir says he will drop kick Lance in the chest and give Felipe a swing in the seat for the interim. If, of course, you're on something there, Vladir, but if, of course, they can't get Max, that's, I agree with you. Felipe, I bloody know, man. This again, you guys are going to get me going scorched earth here. How does that even work? How does Lance Stroll, as at the 13th of the 8th, 2024, Lance has a seat, Checo Perez has a seat, Logan Sargent 2 has a seat, Zhou Guanyu, who has also been in that underperforming bandwagon of late. How do all of the aforementioned have a seat and Teo Pourchaire can't get one, nor can Felipe Drugovich? What are we doing? It makes no sense, but F1, some say, isn't a meritocracy as far as what goes into getting a drive. Carlos Sainz Jr. spoke brilliantly about this on the New Project podcast, that it's like momentum, the timing of your momentum, that it's luck, it's good fortune, the ability to get yourself into a junior program, Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren too. You need all those things. It's a very, it's a multifaceted root cause analysis pie, this. And you almost need all those things to happen concurrently. Because if you win F2 at a time when there's no seats, you end up like Teo and Felipe, right? Even Oscar had to sit on the bench for at least a couple of years at Alpine. And then only then he could have been. I mean, imagine if Oscar was wasting away in the Alpine car with Gasly and Ocon. Oh, you need luck. You need good fortune. It fails spectacularly or see Mercedes into the 90s. It's techie. It is very techie. Carlos is at Williams. Carlos is indeed at Williams next year. We'll talk about that at some point in some depth. It's not that Lance is awful, but he's not at the required level to win championships, in my opinion. And again, you need the talent requisite, commensurate talent for an Adrian Newey car, don't you, Macon? Do you know what I mean? I'm grateful to Lance because it saved Alonso from Alpine. It's a good shout. Mikel Palou to Audi. He's going to Audi. Bartoletto, isn't it? That's the talk. Oh, and by the way, let's talk about this very quickly. I've seen an article from the legends over at F1 Oversteer that talks about reminiscent of Ferrari international assistants. Remember that? Remember around the time of Michael Schumacher, 2000 to 2004 settings, that every time there was a Ferrari indiscretion, you just knew that they were going to get off, that they would never ever get a penalty. Even a few years ago when they were doing the dodgy thing with fuel flow, ultimately that just went away, right? Not dissimilar to the asymmetric braking that we've seen. It was all settled behind closed doors, cloak and dagger settings. And Ferrari for the longest time were the epitome of that. The FIA, Ferrari International Assistants as so many called them then, would always extend them extensive goodwill, never ever punish them as they should have been punished. And that's why people back in the day, hardcore F1 fans, used to call them Ferrari International Assistants. Now speaking to that, it gets techie. Toto Wolff say F1 Oversteer, courtesy of David Comerford, that according to Formula Passion, Toto Wolff harboured bigger ambitions in Formula One, that his dream was to climb the pyramid and eventually become the CEO of the commercial rights holders Liberty Media. Oh, the humanity. What, you mean a Stefano Domenicali type thing? Yes, that's what we mean. Former Mercedes colleague Ross Brawn used to occupy the managing director role at Liberty, but Wolff was prevented from making a similar move. Again, power of veto, because ex-chief Mattia Binotto executed their veto because they didn't want to endure the conflict of interest. Why would you have a head of the commercial rights holder as Toto Wolff, through whose veins runs silver? He's a Mercedes guy, but then how comes we have Stefano Domenicali currently there, who also has an allegiance, but this time red and Ferrari? Techie that. So the plan therefore, listen, and this is me reaching massively before I went away. Plan therefore was for James Vowles to be promoted to team principal of Mercedes. That's why he was hanging around so long, because he knew in his mind, and more than likely would have had conversations with Toto Wolff about his aspirations. Got a boss above you, you need to find out their plans. If they're looking to move on imminently, then you can act up one day, get the promotion into that role. Didn't happen ultimately because Mattia Binotto vetoed it. Oh, the humanity. Poor James Vowles. Well, he's got his role now, team principal settings anyway, hasn't he? So all's well and ends well. I did not know this about Toto Wolff, though, I'll be honest with you. I know he's a ladder climber and a billionaire and a very savvy business mind. Sometimes a half-decent racing mind too. 8 Constructors' Championships isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. But it's techie. Toto's a wild card in this game. I remember the Ferrari International Assistants being said a lot during Spot, mate. Techie. How techie do you want to get? It's bonkers. But yeah, no, F1, listen, don't let anybody tell you that the news cycle, there's Checo as well, but we'll get to that another day. Pierre Vacher is saying that there's more that needs to be done than just face value stuff. It goes deeper as far as trying to expedite for Checo's learning curve, trying to improve him, get him back to the mountaintop ahead of critical Grand Prix post the summer break, which of course will be Baku and Singapore, the tracks per Christian Horner at which he's travelled so well around most recently in previous years. Oh, the humanity.